The society that loses its grip on the past is in danger, for it produces men who know nothing but the present and who are not aware that life had been and could be different from what it is. Aristotle, Greek philosopher, 384 BC to 322 BC. Chapter 1. Smoke rushed into the underground hideout in a blinding rage. He was hit close to his scapular bone, but that was the least of his worries now. He wore a black leather trench coat on top of a white turtleneck fitted shirt, which was now stained with thick crimson red as a result of profuse bleeding he had tried to suppress. A gold skull pendant chain dangled playfully in the middle of his broad chest. His semi-automatic Ruger SR-4C gun remained tightly glued to his gloved palm. The other gang members followed behind, everyone keeping mute, mournful, some nursing their gunshot wounds, others cursing under their breath. It was a sorely bad night. While several cops were gunned down during the shootout, they captured just one. This most definitely would be the scapegoat. He did not need to be told what his fate would be, especially with a man as deadly as Smoke. Smoke was not just a drug lord, he was brutal when he dealt with enemies, and when he dealt with traitors, he was a complete beast. In the outside world, Smoke did not exist. Who people saw and related with was the multi-billionaire businessman Arnold Lugard. He had chains of businesses and did a lot of benevolent activities which won people's hearts all across South Africa. His gigantic business empire was, however, built and funded from a massive thriving narcotics business. While the police watched him from the background, he presented a legitimate front and cleaned his tracks perfectly, which made it hard to find any incriminating evidence to nail him. Because of his growing reputation in the business world, he had stopped dealing directly in drug trafficking, but this particular night, he suspended all rules because it was his biggest deal ever, the mother of all deals. He only made sure he cleaned his tracks completely, but one can never be too careful. The drug lord suddenly spun around to face the wounded cop being dragged on by two of his gang members. Everyone froze with fear. In his eyes, he carried a world war, but hidden behind those stern eyes was a pain none of his gang members could gauge. This was going to be his biggest narcotics deal yet, a deal he had been pursuing for years with the Korean drug underworld and the Korean drug lord, Sung Ho. He had anticipated so much and ensured that there were no leakages. It was the biggest narcotics deal he had ever brokered, yet everything was foiled in the twinkle of an eye. "Knife, you and the others evacuate everything here. We have been compromised. Any time from now, the cops will show up," he ordered. "Right away, boss." The man with the codename Knife responded with a gangster swag. Showing no particular emotion, Smoke unexpectedly lifted his gun and darted it at the wounded cop, who remained on the bare floor, whimpering in pain. "I'm going to ask this once, and I will not repeat myself." His eyes bored into the eyes of the cop, who dropped his gaze quickly. Now the expression on his face had suddenly changed. It had become fiery. "How did you get wind about our transaction with Sung Ho, the Korean drug lord?" Smoke queried. The cop stammered, but nothing coherent came out. I knew you were not going to talk, but trust me, I have this all figured out." The drug lord responded sardonically. "Cat Eyes," he barked. Cat Eyes was a nickname he gave to Agatha, one of his most trusted gang members. Even though Agatha had joined the Web, the biggest drug cartel in South Africa, headed by Smoke, a little over a year ago, she had shown skill and street dexterity, won the heart of the notorious drug lord, and became his right-handed person, pitching her against all others who coveted this position. She had become submerged in all their drug operations. Smoke's face was no longer hard. It softened. The way he could switch expressions amazed even his closest subordinates. He offered Agatha his gun. This was a game, a trap perfectly orchestrated to lure prey. He was closing in. "What is this for, boss?" she asked quietly, confused. "During the shootout, my eyes caught sight of you, and something did not add up. You were not shooting directly at the cops, and I wondered why. But never mind about that. You had your reasons, didn't you? Now, to the business of the day. Take my gun and end this trespasser." Agatha collected the gun, pointed it at the cop, but stood transfixed. The wounded man looked on at her and pleaded for life.
"Please."
All the gang members were confused at the drama that gradually played out. "Cat eyes, do not waste my time. Pull the damn trigger," Smoke snapped. And that was the last voice everyone heard. From nowhere in particular, tear gas canisters were fired into the hideout. The gas traveled around the entire atmosphere. Everyone became engulfed in the choking gas in no time. An endless rain of bullets followed suit. No one knew who fired the first shot, but when the shooting died down and the tear gas cleared out, dead bodies littered the ground. Thick red blood and pieces of flesh scattered in various directions. Everywhere smelled of burnt flesh, smoke and blood. Lugard was nowhere to be found. Agatha laid in a pool of blood, gasping for breath and fighting hard to stay alive. She was hit.
"Agatha, stay with me."
Silas, her partner over the years at the police headquarters, pleaded. Fighting back tears, he held the dying woman close to his chest, his vest messed up with the blood. Other cops with submachines in their hands and bulletproof vests combed the entire vicinity with acute vigilance to see if any of the gang members remained, and most especially whether Smoke could be apprehended.
You can't leave now, Agatha. The ambulance is almost here. If you leave, what do you want me to tell your husband?"
Silas continued. A couple of years ago, when Agatha was going to go undercover to join the web and find incriminating evidence to bring Arnold Lugard in, Agatha's husband was reluctant, but Silas assured him that Lugard was the biggest case yet in the Pretoria Police Province. If Agatha succeeded in bringing him in, this meant an instant promotion for her. Aside from other honors she would receive, she would become an instant hero. He told Agatha's husband and her twin boys, handsome 7-year-olds, that in no time, Agatha would be back with them, and that if they were still having doubts on this, they should pin her safety on him. The morning of the sting operation that went awry, Agatha had informed Silas and the other officers about the narcotics deal and hinted that Lugard would be spearheading the negotiations himself, so it would be the 1 in a million opportunity to nip him in the bud. A huge volume of narcotics was changing hands. She told them to await a signal from her when they get to the location in the evening, but they moved in too quickly and messed up the whole plan. The sting operation triggered a bloody shootout, resulting in the slaughtering of Smoke's men and a few unlucky police officers, after which Lugard disappeared with the remaining men, including Agatha, to his hideout. Smoke had planned to go completely underground for a very long time after this operation. This was before things went completely out of hand. The police trailed him down to the hideout, and the web was no longer safe for Agatha, but it was already too late. Her cover was blown. Silas looked more closely at his friend and discovered that she no longer had that spark between her eyes he had always seen. She was dead. Shortly after, the ambulance arrived, but of what use was it? This was a month ago. The weeks that followed were excruciating ones for Silas. Silas Jabulani was the most decorated officer at the police headquarters Pretoria and had a very promising career ahead of him. This was before his wife Sharon filed for divorce, accusing him of neglect and prioritizing his job above family. In a fierce rebuttal to the alleged neglect, she restricted his access to their son, King, whom they had after 7 years of delay. king, 5, meant the whole world to Silas. The thought of having to be denied access to see his boy, whom he loved so dearly, made him resolve to heavy drinking, and he soon slipped into a medical condition called alcohol use disorder. He had to undergo rehab for a while and was showing remarkable signs of improvement before his best friend at the headquarters office, Agatha, met her end in the middle of service to her country. Maybe he could have told her to pull out before the unfortunate incident. Maybe if he and the other police officers had arrived early enough at the hideout, she would still be alive. There were too many maybes for him to deal with. He could not bring himself to live with the guilt or to even face Agatha's husband or her twin boys, who could not wait to have their mother with them again. So, after Agatha's burial, he decided to go on vacation to Egypt to visit his uncle and foster father, Silas Jabulani, Professor of Egyptology at the American University, Cairo. Perhaps when he returned from Egypt, he would have been able to clear his head to decide if he wanted to quit the police or continue. He could not think of going on after Agatha's demise. The pain, the regret, the guilt. As the plane touched the runway at the Cairo International Airport, Silas shook his head a few times in an attempt to clear his mind of the unfortunate events of the past few months and tried to look forward to having a refreshing time in Egypt, a land referred to as the gift of the Nile, the land of the pharaohs and 1,000 suns.